The budget breakdown you've seen is a vendor wish list, not a planning strategy. Every budget guide tells you to spend 10% on florals, 15% on photography, 5% on stationery, but no one explains why those numbers exist or whether they serve your event at all. They weren't reverse engineered from how guests actually feel. They were designed to make sure every vendor category gets a cut. Traditional budget breakdowns are vendor wish lists disguised as planning advice. A couple came to me after working with another planner who'd handed them a standard breakdown: 50% venue and catering, 10 on florals, 15 on photography, 5 on stationery, 10 on everything else. They followed it exactly, but the venue was beautiful and empty. No tables, chairs, linens, or staffing. By the time they added rentals, they'd blown past their catering budget. Photography ate its 15%, but they hadn't set aside anything for a videographer. And 6 months later, they were wishing they had video they'll never be able to get. The florals looked lovely in arrival photos and wilted by hour 3. Paid stationery for invitations no one kept, and that 10% for entertainment bought them a DJ playing Spotify playlists. The problem wasn't that they overspent. The problem was the structure itself. It assumed every event has the same priorities and the same venue, which is never true. That's how you end up with a balanced spreadsheet and an unbalanced event. Every vendor gets paid fairly, but no single element is strong enough to create a moment worth remembering. Your guests walk into a room where everything is fine, the food is fine, the music is fine, the flowers are fine. Nothing stands out. Nothing surprises them. Nothing makes them feel the event was designed for them. That's not wasted money, that's wasted opportunity. You had one chance to create something your guests would talk about for years, and instead you built something they'll forget by next month. So before you assign a single dollar to any category, ask yourself one question. What do I want my guests to feel when they arrive, when they eat, when they leave? Then build the budget backward from those feelings. If you want them immersed in your story, invest in experiential design and how the space flows, not in favors they'll leave on the table. If you want them to feel cared for, invest in service and the menu, not upgraded charger plates. The budget is a tool for designing emotion, not for checking boxes. That reframe protects you from the small stuff, but there's one decision that quietly sets half your budget before you've made a single deliberate choice, and most people make it for the wrong reasons. It hides inside the one thing everyone thinks they already understand. Your venue choice dictates half your budget before you even know it. The biggest budget decision you'll make isn't how much you spend on the venue, it's whether the venue includes the infrastructure or forces you to rent it. Most people choose a space for its location, then discover 6 weeks later they need $8,000 in rentals they never planned for. A cheaper, raw venue can cost you $15,000 more than an all-inclusive space once you add what's missing. A client of mine chose a raw industrial space because the rental fee was $3,000 compared to $8,000 at a hotel ballroom. They thought they were saving $5,000, but the raw space didn't include tables, chairs, linens, flatware, glassware, china, or staffing. Once we priced out rentals, $45 per person for tables and chairs, another $30 for place settings and glassware, $4,000 for linens, $3,000 for extra staff because the venue provided no coordinators or servers, they were at $12,000 in rentals alone. Their total venue cost was $15,000. The hotel ballroom at $8,000 included all of it, plus liability insurance, backup power, and an on-site coordinator. The raw space photographed beautifully. It also cost nearly double and took 3 times the coordination. This is the hidden trap that sinks more events than any other decision. People budget for the venue's base price, price, not its total cost. A $10,000 all-inclusive space is often cheaper than a $4,000 raw one once you add rentals, staffing, generators, restrooms, parking, and permits. But you don't see that until you're already under contract and the quotes start arriving. And it reaches into your timeline too. All-inclusive venues handle setup, breakdown, coordination, and vendor load-in. Raw spaces mean hiring a day of coordinator, renting the space for an extra day just to set up, and managing load-in for a dozen vendors. That's not only money, it's mental bandwidth, and it's risk. So when you're comparing venues, ask each one for a line item list of what's included. Tables, chairs, linens, flatware, glassware, china, staffing, coordination, liability insurance, backup power, parking, load-in access, then price out what's missing and add it to the base fee. That number is your real venue budget. You'll often find the expensive, all-inclusive space is actually the affordable one once you see the full picture. Now you know where the money hides. The harder question is where it should go on purpose. If I had to cut a budget in half and still create something memorable, I know exactly which 3 categories I'd protect: the venue and how the space feels, the food and drink, and the entertainment or programming. Everything else, florals, stationery, upgraded linens, welcome bags, is negotiable because guests don't remember decor. They remember how they felt, what they ate, whether they had fun. Guests remember feeling welcomed, eating something remarkable, and having an experience they didn't expect, not your centerpieces. I designed a 50th birthday dinner for a client with a $30,000 budget. She wanted elaborate florals, custom stationery, upgraded linens, monogrammed napkins, and a 4-course plated dinner. I told her we could do all of that and create a visually stunning night where guests posted photos and forgot it by the weekend. Or we could cut the florals to simple greenery, drop the custom stationery and the monogrammed napkins, and move that $8,000 to a live jazz trio, a mixologist doing tableside cocktails, and a surprise dessert course with a sparkler moment timed to the music. She chose the second. The night had half the decor and twice the energy. Guests didn't notice the flowers, they noticed the music, the cocktails, and the fact that the host was dancing instead of stressing. A year later, people still bring up that night, not because it looked expensive, but because it felt alive. Here's the pattern most people miss. Decor creates a first impression, experience creates a lasting memory. Your guests walk in, notice the room is beautiful, take a photo, and stop thinking about the decor entirely. What holds them for the next 3 hours is whether the food is good, whether the music makes them want to dance, whether the conversation is interesting, and whether they feel the whole thing was designed to make them feel something. If those are weak, no amount of florals will save it. That's the trade-off. A $5,000 floral installation buys 5 minutes of wow at arrival. A $5,000 live band buys 3 hours of energy that shapes the entire emotional arc of the night. Same cost, one lives in photos, the other lives in memory. So as you build your budget, rank every line item by how long it touches the guest experience. Venue and spatial design, 4 hours. Food and drink, 2 hours of active engagement. Entertainment, 3 hours of emotional arc. Florals, 5 minutes of arrival, then background. Stationery, 0 because they see it before the event, not during. Upgraded charger plates, 0 seconds of conscious attention. Invest in the categories that shape the arc of the night, not the ones that check a visual box. That's how you decide where money creates memory. But there's a second set of categories that never make it onto any ranking because most people don't even know they exist until the final invoice lands. And those are the ones that quietly break budgets. The budget categories no one warns you about until it's too late. Every guide tells you to budget for venue, catering, florals, and photography. No one seems to tell you to budget for day of coordination, liability insurance, vendor meals, overtime fees, or the 15% service charge waiting on your final invoice. These invisible costs add up to 20 or 30% of your budget. Miss them and you're either cutting something that matters or going into debt. The budget categories that break people aren't the ones they plan for, they're the ones no one mentioned. A corporate client came to me with a $50,000 budget for an activation event. They'd allocated 20 for the venue, 15 for catering, 8 for AV and production, 5 for florals and decor, 2 for photography. That's 50 exactly. What they hadn't budgeted for, $3,000 for day of coordination because the venue didn't provide one. $2,000 for liability insurance required by the venue, $1,500 in vendor meals required by union rules for the AV crew, $2,000 in overtime because the event ran 30 minutes long and the venue charged $500 per half hour, and a $4,500 service charge, 18% on the catering and bar bill, which they didn't realize was separate from the gratuity. The final invoice came to $63,000. They were $13,000 over, and they had to pull from the next quarter's marketing to cover it. The problem wasn't overspending on any one category. It was that they didn't know these costs existed until the invoice arrived. When you don't budget for the invisible costs, you're forced into reactive cuts instead of intentional ones. The florals get downgraded because that vendor is easiest to renegotiate. The photography hours get shortened, the dessert course disappears, and now your event is cheaper to look at and thinner to experience, all because you scramble to cover costs you never saw coming. The deeper damage is to your trust. When your surprise invoices land, you start questioning every vendor, every contract, every line, not because anyone did anything wrong, but because no one gave you the full picture. That stress doesn't only touch the budget, it reaches into your ability to present at the event you're hosting. So build a contingency of 15 to 20% into your budget before you allocate to categories, not after, before. If your total is $50,000, your working budget is $42,000. That remaining $8,000 covers day of coordination, liability insurance, vendor meals, overtime, service charges, and the inevitable "we need one more thing" moment. If you don't use it, you're under budget. If you need it and don't have it, you're either cutting something meaningful or paying for it in stress. Protecting yourself upfront is one thing, but almost every event goes over budget during planning anyway, and what you do in that moment decides whether your event survives it intact. Cut the wrong way and you weaken the whole night. There's a way to cut that guests never feel at all. How to reallocate when you're over budget without destroying the experience. Every event goes over budget at some point during planning, not because you're bad at math, but because you didn't know what things actually cost until the quotes started coming in. The difference between a cut that weakens your event and one that protects the guest experience comes down to knowing which categories can flex and which ones can't. Going over budget isn't the problem. Cutting the wrong categories to fix it is. A couple came to me planning a wedding with a $75,000 budget. By the time the vendor quotes were in, they were at $92,000. Their first instinct was to cut photography hours, downgrade florals, and drop the videographer entirely. I told them to stop. Those cuts would weaken the event without solving the problem. Instead, we looked for categories with high cost and low guest impact. They were spending $6,000 on custom stationery, invitations, programs, menus, place cards, signage that guests would glance at once and forget. We moved them to a $1,200 semi-custom suite from an online designer that saved $4,800. They were spending $4,000 on upgraded linens that looked barely better than the venue's included ones. We kept the venue's linens and added one statement installation for $1,200. That saved $2,800. They were spending $3,000 on welcome bags that half the guests wouldn't take home, so we cut the bags and moved that $3,000 to the bar for premium liquor and a signature cocktail. Total savings, $10,600. Total guest experience impact, 0. The event landed at $81,000, still over their original number, but within their real capacity. And nothing that mattered to guests got touched. Here's the reallocation principle most people miss. Categories with high visibility and low interaction can almost always be cut or downgraded without anyone noticing. Stationery, upgraded linens, elaborate floral installations, welcome bags, favor displays. Guests see these for seconds and never think about them again. But categories with low visibility and high interaction, food quality, drink variety, music, comfortable seating, the temperature of the room, touch guests for hours. Cut the first, protect the second. The long-term cost of cutting wrong is regret. Clients have told me years later they wish they'd spent less on flowers and more on video, that they'd skipped the custom invitations and hired the better band. No one has ever told me they regret spending less on decor and more on how their guests felt. So when you're over budget, list every vendor category and ask 2 questions. How long does this touch the guest experience? 5 seconds, 5 minutes, or 5 hours? And would my guests notice if I cut it or scaled it back? If the answer is 5 seconds and no, that category is flexible. If it's 5 hours and yes, it's non-negotiable. Move money from the flexible categories to protect the ones that can't move. Your guests won't remember the table runners. They'll remember if the food was cold or the music fell flat. That's how you fix a budget under pressure. But you shouldn't have to relocate in a panic at all. And you won't if you build the budget right from the start. There's a structure that decides all of this before the first quote ever arrives. The budget allocation framework that actually works for real events. Budget allocation isn't about percentages, it's about priority tiers. Some categories are non-negotiable because they shape the core experience. Some are important, but flexible, and some are nice to haves that only get funded once the first 2 are fully covered. Most people spread money across all 3 equally and end up with a mediocre version of everything, instead of an excellent version of what matters. Stop budgeting like every category is equal. Fund your top tier fully before you touch the extras. Here's the 3-tier framework I use with every client. Tier 1 is the venue with rentals, food and drink, and the entertainment or programming. These shape how guests feel for the entire event. If any one of them is weak, the event is weak, period. Tier 1 gets funded first and fully. On a $60,000 event, that's usually $45 to $50. Tier 2 is photography, videography, coordination. These preserve the memory and make sure the night runs. Important, but they can flex a little if things are tight. Tier 2 gets funded after Tier 1 is locked, usually $8,000 to $12,000. Tier 3 is florals, decor, stationery, favors, upgrades. These add polish but don't change the experience. Tier 3 gets whatever's left, usually $2,000 to $5,000. And if nothing is left, Tier 3 gets cut entirely. I had a client apply this to a $40,000 budget. Tier 1, $32,000, a venue with rentals included, elevated catering, live music. Tier 2, $7,000, photographer and a day of coordinator. Tier 3, $1,000, greenery and candles. The event had almost no decor and felt more alive than events with $10,000 floral budgets because the energy came from the food, the music, and the space, not the centerpieces. The reason this works is that it stops you from diluting your money across categories that don't build on each other. Fund Tier 1 fully and you create a foundation that lifts everything else. Great food makes the venue feel richer. Great music makes the space feel electric. Great flow makes even simple decor feel intentional. But underfund Tier 1 to make room for Tier 3, and you get a beautiful room where no one's having fun. The decor can't cover for bad food or boring music. It only makes the gap more obvious. You can even hear it in how guests describe the night afterward. Strong Tier 1 and light Tier 3 gets called so fun, such a vibe, unforgettable. Weak Tier 1 and heavy Tier 3 gets called pretty, nice, looked great in photos. One creates memory, the other just creates content. So before you book a single vendor, write your budget in 3 tiers. Tier 1, the categories that shape the core experience. A venue with rentals, food, drink, entertainment. Tier 2, the categories that preserve and execute, photography, videography, coordination. Tier 3, the categories that add polish, florals, decor, stationery, favors. Fund Tier 1 first and fully, then Tier 2, then and only then Tier 3. Your event will be stronger with an excellent Tier 1 and no Tier 3 than with a mediocre version of all three.